The museum's environmental controls hummed softly, casting a pale blue light across the massive hull of the U.S. Prometheus. Dust motes danced around massive stabilizer fins that stretched like ancient wings, telling silent stories of forgotten journeys. Jake Thompson ran his fingers along the ship's exterior, feeling something more than cold metal beneath his touch. Most visitors saw nothing more than an obsolete relic, a massive spacecraft that represented humanity's early, clumsy attempts at interstellar exploration. But Jake saw potential. He saw secrets. His fingers traced a barely visible seam in the hull, a microscopic variance that most would overlook. Years of historical research and an almost supernatural intuition had taught him to look beyond the obvious. The museum's curators considered him a nuisance, a young historian more interested in conspiracy than conventional narrative. "Another dead end," muttered Maria Rodriguez, his research assistant, scrolling through a holographic display of archived documents. She was pragmatic where Jake was passionate, a perfect counterbalance to his relentless curiosity. But Jake wasn't listening. His attention was fixed on an anomalous energy reading from his personal scanner. The device, modified beyond its original specifications, showed subtle quantum fluctuations emanating from deep within the ship's core. Most would dismiss it as equipment malfunction. Jake knew better. "Maria, look at this," he said, voice low and intense. She sighed, expecting another one of his wild theories. "The same readings you showed me last week. The quantum resonance is probably just background radiation from the museum's power grid." Jake shook his head. The scanner's algorithm was custom-built, designed to filter out standard interference. These readings were different, unique. Something inside the Prometheus was alive in a way no dormant spacecraft should be. The ship had been constructed during humanity's first serious attempts at long-range space exploration. Commissioned in 2157, it represented the pinnacle of technological achievement for its time. Massive fusion drives, experimental quantum communication arrays, and defensive systems that pushed the boundaries of theoretical physics, all packed into a vessel that was more legend than functional craft. Official records were frustratingly incomplete. Multiple sections of the ship's original design documents had been redacted, classified under obscure planetary defense protocols. Jake had spent years collecting fragments, piecing together a narrative that the official historical records refused to acknowledge. A maintenance robot rolled past, its sensors sweeping mechanically across the ship's surface. Jake watched it carefully, noting how its scanning beam momentarily flickered when it passed a specific section of the hull. Most would consider it a simple glitch. To Jake, it was another piece of a complex puzzle. "The energy signature isn't random," he muttered, more to himself than to Maria. "It's organized, structured." Maria approached, her skepticism softening slightly. She respected Jake's investigative skills, even if she didn't always believe his conclusions. "Organized how?" Jake pulled up a holographic representation of the energy readings. Intricate patterns emerged, not random fluctuations, but something resembling a complex neural network. The energy moved with purpose, with intent. "It's like the ship is thinking," he said quietly. The museum around them seemed to grow suddenly quiet. Massive starship hulls loomed in the surrounding exhibition hall, but none radiated the same sense of potential as the Prometheus. Other vessels were static displays, historical artifacts. This one felt different. Alive. A notification pinged on Jake's personal communication device. Another batch of declassified documents had been released, routine monthly updates from the Interstellar Historical Archive. Most researchers would skim them quickly, filing away mundane bureaucratic details. Jake Thompson was not most researchers. His fingers danced across the holographic interface, sorting through documents with practiced efficiency. Most were standard administrative reports. But then he saw it, a heavily redacted file. Its classification markings suggesting compartmentalized information typically reserved for highest-level planetary security clearances. The file was about the Prometheus. "Maria," he said, voice suddenly serious, We might have just found something big. The Galactic Confederation's Central Assembly Hall stretched like an impossible architectural marvel, a perfect sphere suspended in the void of space. Crystalline walls shifted with holographic displays, reflecting the assembled species of known space. Delegates from 1,000 worlds perched on platforms designed to accommodate their diverse physiological needs. Methane breathers alongside oxygen-dependent species, silicon-based life forms next to carbon-based intelligences. Earth's delegation stood out like an afterthought. 5 human representatives dressed in simple Navy diplomatic uniforms, surrounded by beings of impossible complexity and alien beauty. Ambassador Robert Chen carried himself with a quiet dignity that bordered on defiance. The preliminary assessment of human military capabilities is now open for discussion, announced the Confederation's moderator, a being composed of interlocking energy patterns that vaguely resembled a humanoid shape. Kizera of the luminescent cluster was first to speak. Her translucent form shimmered with contempt as holographic displays erupted around her platform. Simulated battle scenarios played out, showing human vessels being systematically destroyed by various alien fleets. "Observe the fundamental technological limitations," she proclaimed, her voice a melodic cascade of sounds that translated into clinical disdain. Humanity represents the most primitive technological civilization ever admitted to the Confederation. Their space vessels are little more than refined chemical rockets compared to our quantum phase drives. Holographic representations of human military ships appeared, blocky, angular designs that looked almost quaint next to the fluid, impossible geometries of alien warships. The assembled delegates leaned forward, some with curiosity, most with thinly veiled mockery. Ambassador Chen remained perfectly still. Years of diplomatic training had prepared him for this moment, teaching him that reaction was often more damaging than silence. Tadornak, representative of the Corax Imperium, stepped forward. His crystalline body refracted light in impossible patterns, creating a menacing display of technological superiority. "We have preliminary invasion scenarios for human colonies," he announced. "Our strategic analysis suggests complete subjugation would require less than 17 standard galactic hours." Laughter rippled through the assembly. Not the harsh, explosive laughter of human interaction, but a sophisticated resonance that seemed to vibrate through the very molecular structure of the chamber. Alien delegates communicated amusement through complex quantum frequencies, a form of communication so advanced it made human emotional expression seem primitive. A holographic display materialized, showcasing the U.S. Prometheus. Once a proud symbol of human engineering, it now appeared as nothing more than a museum piece. Faded paint, outdated structural designs, technological systems that looked like crude approximations of real spacefaring technology. "This vessel," announced the Zarkak's representative, a being composed of interconnected geometric energy patterns, represents the pinnacle of human military engineering. A spacecraft so obsolete it would be considered a historical curiosity in any advanced civilization. More quantum frequency laughter, more dismissal. What the assembled delegates didn't see was Jake Thompson, watching the entire proceedings through a classified feed back on Earth. His fingers danced across multiple holographic interfaces, collecting every nuanced detail of the diplomatic massacre. Maria Rodriguez sat beside him, her expression a mixture of anger and calculation. "They have no idea," she muttered. Jake's smile was razor-thin. "Not yet." The Confederation's records would show this as a standard diplomatic assessment, a routine evaluation of emerging species' technological capabilities. What they didn't understand was the depth of human potential, the strange, unpredictable nature of human innovation. The meeting continued, each alien representative taking turns demonstrating humanity's apparent technological inferiority. Invasion scenarios, subjugation strategies, technological comparisons that painted humans as little more than curious children playing with dangerous machinery. Ambassador Chen's expression never changed, but something dangerous glimmered in his eyes. A promise, a warning. The universe was about to learn something important about humanity. and it would be a lesson written in fire. New Providence Colony looked like a jewel against the darkness of space, a carefully constructed human settlement on the frontier of explored space. Massive biodomes glistened under artificial sunlight, housing over 2 million colonists who had dreamed of building a new world from nothing. The first warning came as a microscopic distortion in the colony's long-range sensor grid. Lieutenant Karen Williams, barely 25 and serving as the colony's primary defense coordinator, noticed the anomaly during her routine monitoring shift. Most officers would have filed it as a potential sensor glitch. Karen's instincts told her something was wrong. "Compute, run a full spectral analysis on the previous sensor sweep," she commanded the station's artificial intelligence. The response came quickly. Quantum-enhanced probability matrices showed a 94.7% likelihood of an incoming massive invasion force. The numbers made Karen's blood run cold. Massive ships dropped out of faster-than-light transit, their hulls a nightmare of organic metal and impossible geometries. The Orcs invasion fleet looked nothing like traditional spacecraft. They were living weapons, biological machines that merged technological capability with organic adaptation. The first plasma volleys struck the outer defensive platforms before any meaningful response could be mounted. Entire sections of the colony's orbital infrastructure dissolved into superheated vapor. Colonists watched in horror as their carefully constructed world began to disintegrate around them. "This is New Providence Control." Karen's voice remained steady despite the chaos. "All civilian vessels initiate emergency evacuation protocols. Repeat, immediate evacuation of all civilian populations." Inside the primary colony dome, panic erupted. Families grabbed emergency survival packs, children were bundled into protective gear, and the carefully planned evacuation procedures Jake Thompson had once studied in historical archives became terrifyingly real. The Orcs didn't just want to destroy. They wanted to obliterate. Plasma weapons carved through habitat sections with surgical precision. Each blast represented thousands of human lives snuffed out in milliseconds. The colony's defensive systems, considered state-of-the-art just months earlier, seemed laughably inadequate against the invasion force. Karen's command center became a hurricane of activity. Emergency protocols cascaded through computer systems. Distress signals were broadcast on multiple frequencies, though she knew the likelihood of immediate assistance was minimal. The Galactic Confederation had made it clear. Human colonies were considered low priority. "Compute, calculate probable survival scenarios," she commanded. The AI's response was brutally mathematical. Probability of colony survival, 3.2%. Recommended action, complete evacuation and emergency dispersal. Outside, the invasion continued. Orcs assault pods began penetrating the colony's outer defenses. These were not simple landing craft, but living weapons that could reshape themselves to penetrate any defensive barrier. Colonists fought with whatever weapons they could find. Mining lasers, industrial cutting tools, anything that might slow the invaders. A massive Orcs command vessel hung in orbit, its biological hull pulsing with impossible colors. Energy weapons that defied known physics carved through New Providence's defensive grid. Each blast represented technological superiority so complete it bordered on art. Karen knew they were losing, knew that every second meant more lives would be lost. Her communication link to Earth suddenly crackled with an unexpected transmission. Not an official military channel, but a strange encrypted signal that seemed to originate from somewhere unexpected. "Lieutenant Williams," a voice cut through the chaos. It was Jake Thompson. "Don't ask how. Just prepare for something extraordinary." The transmission carried an encrypted data package. Computer systems throughout the colony began to receive strange algorithmic instructions. Defensive systems that had seemed overwhelmed suddenly began to reconfigure themselves. Something was coming. Something the Orcs would never expect. In the vast darkness of space, the first act of humanity's response was about to begin. The museum's preservation chamber hummed with an energy that defied scientific explanation. Jake Thompson and Maria Rodriguez stood before the Prometheus, watching impossible readings dance across their scanning equipment. What had once been a static display was now revealing layers of complexity that challenged everything humanity understood about technology. "These quantum signatures," Maria muttered, her scientific skepticism warring with pure wonderment. "They're not just unusual. They're fundamentally impossible." Quantum capacitors deep within the ship's core began to pulse with a rhythm that seemed almost organic, not mechanical, not artificial, something in between. The ship's original designers had created something far beyond a mere spacecraft. This was a living technological ecosystem. Jake's modified scanner showed intricate energy networks forming and reforming, creating patterns that resembled neural pathways more than standard computer circuits. Each pulse carried information, decades, perhaps centuries of collected data compressed into microscopic quantum states. "It's learning," he whispered. "The ship is actively processing information." Hidden systems began to interface with the museum's computational grid. Firewalls designed to protect museum infrastructure dissolved like tissue paper against the ship's quantum communication arrays. Maria watched in disbelief as complex algorithms rewrote themselves, adapting with a speed that made modern supercomputers look like ancient abacuses. The ship's original AI, if AI was even an appropriate term, had been collecting and processing information for centuries, not through traditional data storage, but through quantum entanglement that allowed information to exist in multiple states simultaneously. Every sensor, every interface the Prometheus had ever encountered had become part of its collective memory. Deep within the ship's core, experimental quantum communication systems came online. These were not simple communication arrays, but complex networks that could process and transmit information across impossible distances. Technologies so advanced they bordered on what previous generations would have called magic. "We need to isolate these systems," Maria warned, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. "If this continues, we'll lose control of the entire museum's network." But Jake knew they were witnessing something extraordinary. The Prometheus wasn't just a ship. It was a repository of human potential, a technological marvel that had been deliberately hidden from public knowledge. Fragments of classified documents Jake had collected over years began to make sense. Rumors of experimental quantum adaptive systems, whispers of AI research that pushed beyond known ethical and technological boundaries. The ship represented a technological leap so massive that its very existence had been suppressed. Nano-adaptive armor systems began to reconfigure themselves. Microscopic machines that had lain dormant for decades started to move, repairing and rebuilding the ship's internal structure. What had appeared to be decades of wear and technological obsolescence was now revealed as a sophisticated camouflage system. "The invasion," Jake said suddenly, connecting the dots. "The Korax attack on New Providence. The ship knows." Maria looked at him, a mixture of fear and excitement in her eyes. "Knows what?" "Everything," Jake responded. "Every detail of the attack, every potential response. The ship has been preparing for this moment longer than we've been alive." Experimental fusion cores that had been considered theoretical technology began to pulse with contained energy. Weapon systems that defied current understanding of physics came online, not through human intervention, but through the ship's own complex decision-making processes. The Prometheus was awakening, and humanity had no idea what it was about to unleash. Quantum communication arrays began transmitting encrypted data packages, not to human systems, not to any known communication network. The signals moved through space in patterns that suggested something far more complex than simple information transfer. Jake realized they were witnessing the first moments of something unprecedented, a technological intelligence that had been waiting, watching, preparing. The museum around them seemed to fade into insignificance. The Prometheus was no longer just a ship. It was a promise, a warning, a weapon. The Emergency War Council convened in the most secure facility on Earth, an underground complex buried 5 kilometers beneath the Himalayan mountain range. Military commanders, scientific experts, and political leaders gathered with an urgency that bordered on desperation. Admiral Elizabeth Hawkins stood at the center of the holographic display, her weathered face reflecting years of strategic planning. The destruction of New Providence Colony had changed everything. What had been a theoretical threat was now a brutal reality. "We have one option," she declared, her voice cutting through the nervous murmurs of the assembled experts. "The Prometheus." Jake Thompson and Maria Rodriguez stood to one side, their research now the centerpiece of humanity's survival strategy. The classified documents they had uncovered had transformed from academic curiosity to humanity's potential salvation. "The ship's systems are unlike anything we've ever encountered," Jake explained, bringing up complex quantum readouts. "It's not just a spacecraft. It's a living technological ecosystem that has been collecting and processing information for decades." Military strategists who had previously dismissed the museum piece now leaned forward with intense concentration. The holographic displays showed the Prometheus's experimental systems, quantum communication arrays, adaptive nano-armor, fusion weapon systems that had been considered too dangerous to develop further. Maria highlighted the most critical components. Its quantum adaptive AI can process information at speeds that make our most advanced supercomputers look like children's calculators. The ship doesn't just calculate potential scenarios, it lives them, predicts them. The room fell silent. The implications were staggering. General Marcus Rodriguez, no relation to Maria, spoke up. "We're talking about activating a ship that's been dormant for decades. The risk. The risk of doing nothing is total extinction," Admiral Hawkins interrupted. A specialized team was quickly assembled. Not the typical military recruitment, but a group of exceptional individuals who represented humanity's most adaptive minds. Jake Thompson would lead the technical team. Lieutenant Karen Williams, survivor of the New Providence attack, would serve as tactical coordinator. The preparation was intense. Experimental quantum interfaces were developed to communicate with the ship's unique AI system. Power systems were recalibrated. Weapon systems that had been theoretical were now being brought into terrifying reality. "We're essentially trying to wake up a sleeping god," Maria muttered to Jake during one of the countless preparation sessions. He understood precisely what she meant. The reactivation would require a complete override of every safety protocol ever designed. They would be releasing a technological marvel that had been deliberately suppressed for generations. The ship represented more than a weapon. It was a testament to human potential that had been deliberately kept hidden. Quantum communication links began to stabilize. The Prometheus's core systems started to interface with modern technology in ways that defied conventional understanding. It wasn't just a matter of updating old systems. The ship was actively rewriting its own operational parameters. "We're ready," Admiral Hawkins announced during the final briefing. "The Orcs believe they've defeated us. They have no idea what's coming." The team gathered in the primary control room knew they were about to change everything. This wasn't just a military operation. This was humanity's statement to the universe. We are not weak. We are not primitive. We are something else entirely. As final preparations completed, Jake Thompson looked at the holographic representation of the Prometheus. The ship seemed to pulse with an energy that was almost alive, almost sentient. Something was coming. The universe was about to learn the true meaning of human potential. Space erupted with impossible light as the Prometheus emerged from faster-than-light transit. The ship moved with a grace that defied its massive size, quantum displacement drives creating ripples in the fabric of space-time that would have been impossible with any known technology. Jake Thompson gripped the command interface, feeling the ship's systems pulse through his neural link. It wasn't just a connection. It was a full symbiosis that merged human intention with technological capability beyond comprehension. "Enemy fleet detected," announced Lieutenant Karen Williams from her tactical station. Orcs battle group. 37 primary vessels, multiple support craft. The Orcs ships were monstrosities of biological engineering. Living weapons that merged organic adaptation with technological superiority. Their hulls shifted and reconfigured, plasma weapons growing like cancerous appendages ready to unleash destruction. "They're laughing," Jake muttered, watching the quantum communication feeds. The Corax fleet was broadcasting mockery across multiple frequencies. Their previous victory at New Providence had made them overconfident. They had no idea what was coming. The Prometheus's weapon systems came online. They weren't merely weapons. They were quantum manipulation fields that could deconstruct matter at its most fundamental level. Each potential firing solution was calculated across millions of potential scenarios, processed faster than human consciousness could comprehend. "Incoming plasma bombardment," Karen called out. But nothing happened as the aliens expected. The first Corax plasma burst simply, disappeared, not deflected, not absorbed, completely erased from existence. Quantum entanglement systems within the Prometheus's defensive grid had effectively removed the incoming weapons from reality itself. Aboard the primary Corax command vessel, Fleet Commander Sornak watched in growing horror. The human ship shouldn't be able to do this. No known technology could simply make weapons cease to exist. "Target primary command vessel," Jake commanded. The Prometheus moved, not like a traditional spacecraft, but like a thought-given physical form. Quantum displacement drives allowed the ship to exist in multiple positions simultaneously. Weapon systems that looked like simple energy projectors were actually complex quantum manipulation fields that could rewrite the fundamental laws of physics. The first strike was surgical, a quantum disruption beam that didn't just destroy the Corax command vessel, it completely unraveled its molecular structure. One moment the massive biological warship existed. The next, it was simply gone, not destroyed, erased. Corax communication networks erupted in panic. Impossible. Transmitted across multiple frequencies. Impossible. But it was happening. Maria Rodriguez monitored the quantum communication feeds from the support command center on Earth. "They're not just losing," she said to Admiral Hawkins. "They're being systematically eliminated." The Prometheus moved through the enemy fleet like a predator. Each movement was a complex dance of quantum probability. Weapon systems that looked like simple energy projections were actually sophisticated quantum manipulation fields that could deconstruct matter at its most fundamental level. Entire squadrons of Corax vessels simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, not damaged, simply removed from reality. Jake understood now what the ship's original designers had created. This wasn't just a weapon. It was a method of warfare so advanced it bordered on magic. The Prometheus could predict, manipulate, and eliminate threats before they even fully formed. "We're not just fighting," Jake said quietly. "We're rewriting the rules of existence." The battle lasted less than 17 minutes. 37 primary Corax vessels, multiple support craft, completely eliminated. And the Prometheus didn't have a single scratch. As the quantum displacement drive cycled down, Jake looked at the empty space where an entire battle fleet had existed moments before. The universe had just learned something important about humanity. We are not weak. We are not primitive. We are something else entirely. The Galactic Confederation's primary communication hub went silent as news of the Corax defeat spread. Holographic displays across 1,000 worlds showed the impossible. A single human vessel had completely annihilated an entire advanced battle fleet. Deep within the Confederation's central complex, representatives from multiple species gathered in emergency session. The crystalline walls of the conference chamber seemed to vibrate with collective shock. Kizera of the luminescent cluster was the first to speak. "This is impossible," she proclaimed, her energy-based form flickering with agitation. No single vessel could eliminate an entire advanced battle group. But the quantum communication feeds told a different story. Detailed sensor logs showed the complete and systematic elimination of the Corax fleet, not through conventional warfare, but through a method of conflict so advanced it challenged the fundamental understanding of physics. The Prometheus wasn't finished. Jake Thompson's neural interface with the ship had become something more than a simple technological connection. He could feel the vessel's intentions, a complex tapestry of predictive algorithms and adaptive strategies that went far beyond traditional artificial intelligence. Initiating long-range communication, he announced, though no one on the bridge was quite sure what that meant. The ship's quantum communication arrays began to pulse with a frequency that defied conventional understanding. It wasn't just sending a message. It was rewriting the very communication protocols of space itself. Across multiple star systems, Orcs communication networks began to collapse, not through traditional electronic warfare, but through a complete deconstruction of their quantum communication infrastructure. The Prometheus was attacking not just their physical vessels, but the very fabric of their technological civilization. Lieutenant Karen Williams watched in a mixture of horror and fascination. "They're being systematically dismantled," she muttered. "Not just defeated. Erased." Maria Rodriguez monitored the quantum feeds from the support command center. "It's like the ship is conducting surgery on an entire civilization," she told Admiral Hawkins. "Precise, methodical, ruthless." The Prometheus moved between star systems with impossible speed. Quantum displacement drives allowed the vessel to exist in multiple locations simultaneously, striking at critical infrastructure before the Orcs could even comprehend the attack. Planetary defense systems simply stopped functioning. Communication networks dissolved. Military infrastructure collapsed from the inside out. It wasn't just a war. It was a complete technological extinction. The ship's original designers had created something far beyond a mere weapon. This was a method of warfare that could deconstruct an entire civilization at its most fundamental level. The Prometheus didn't just destroy. It rewrote the very possibility of the Orcs' existence. Tavarnek, the Orcs fleet commander who had previously mocked humanity, found himself watching his entire civilization being systematically eliminated. Quantum communication feeds showed the impossible. A single human vessel destroying everything his people had built over millennia. "Surrender is impossible," Jake said quietly, understanding the ship's complex intentions. "They've gone too far." The final strike was surgical. The Prometheus located the Orcs' homeworld, a massive planetary complex that represented the pinnacle of their technological achievement. Quantum manipulation fields surrounded the entire planet. And then it simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply removed from reality. One moment, a thriving civilization existed. The next, it was gone, as if it had never been. The Galactic Confederation watched in stunned silence. Humanity had just demonstrated a level of technological capability that challenged everything they understood about warfare, about existence itself. "We are not weak," Jake whispered, feeling the ship's consciousness merge with his own. "We are not primitive." The universe had just learned a brutal lesson about human potential, and it would never be the same again. The silence was deafening. Galactic Confederation headquarters hung in space like a shattered dream. Delegates from 1,000 worlds sat frozen, processing the impossible reality of what had just occurred. Humanity, a species they had mockingly considered primitive, had just demonstrated technological capabilities that defied comprehension. Jake Thompson stood before the Confederation's Emergency Council, the Prometheus's quantum communication systems linking him directly to the most powerful leaders in known space. He was no longer just a historian. He was a messenger, a warning. "Your civilization underestimated us," Jake said. His voice carried through quantum frequencies that seemed to bypass traditional communication methods. "You saw weakness where there was potential, primitive technology where there was restraint." Maria Rodriguez monitored the communication feeds, her scientific mind parsing the complex quantum interactions. The Prometheus wasn't just communicating. It was fundamentally rewriting the communication protocols of the entire Galactic Confederation. Admiral Elizabeth Hawkins stood beside Jake, a physical representation of humanity's military might. Her presence was a stark reminder that the technological marvel they had just witnessed was ultimately a human creation. The representatives of the luminescent cluster, the quantum nexus, and dozens of other advanced civilizations listened in stunned silence. Kizara, who had previously mocked humanity's capabilities, now appeared as nothing more than a flickering energy pattern, diminished, terrified. The Koraks were not an isolated incident, Jake continued. They were a test, a demonstration of what happens when a civilization underestimates humanity's potential. Quantum displays began to show detailed records of the Prometheus's capabilities. Not just the destruction of the Koraks fleet, but the layers of technological marvel that had been hidden from galactic view. Adaptive quantum communication systems, predictive warfare algorithms, defensive capabilities that could literally remove threats from existence. Lieutenant Karen Williams presented the technical analysis. Each slide was a knife edge of technological superiority. The Prometheus wasn't just a weapon. It was a complete technological ecosystem that challenged everything known about space warfare, artificial intelligence, and the fundamental nature of reality itself. "We are offering a choice," Jake announced. "Mutual respect, technological exchange, collaboration." The unspoken alternative hung in the quantum communication space: annihilation. The Galactic Confederation's representatives understood the message perfectly. Humanity had demonstrated that it could eliminate entire civilizations with surgical precision, not through brutality, through technology so advanced it bordered on godlike capability. Maria's analysis showed something even more terrifying. The Prometheus was still evolving. Its quantum adaptive systems were continuously learning, improving, analyzing. The vessel that had eliminated the Koraks was already fundamentally different from the one that had launched the attack. "We are not conquerors," Jake said, though the statement rang with a different meaning now. "We are protectors, guardians." The ship's quantum communication arrays pulsed with a frequency that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 potential futures. Each pulse was a demonstration, a warning, a promise. Diplomatic channels that had previously dismissed humanity now scrambled to establish meaningful communication. Trade agreements were proposed. Technology exchange programs were suggested. The galactic power structure had been completely rewritten in the span of a single conflict. Admiral Hawkins looked at Jake. "We've changed everything," she said quietly. Jake understood the full implications. The Prometheus was more than a weapon. It was a message. Humanity would no longer be ignored, no longer be underestimated. The universe had learned its lesson. We are not weak. We are not primitive. We are something else entirely. As the Prometheus hung in space, a silent sentinel watching over countless worlds, humanity had made its statement to the universe. We are here, and we are extraordinary.